So before we launch into it, it's just a little bit of housekeeping then from me. So I'm Claire King, I'm the Community Manager at the International Schools Network. We would love to invite you, if you haven't already, to register for your free ISN membership. Here, then you can get involved in ISNLive events, you can get involved in the podcast, you can connect with other people within the network, you can submit articles for publication, and it's a great way then to network and to get involved with other international educators. So I've just dropped the link here. If you haven't already, then you can then sign up for your free ISN membership there. So finally, we will also be dropping a survey link at the end of the event today. So you can then fill in this survey link, give us some feedback on how the event has gone, but this will also enable you then to receive your certificate at the end. So please do fill this in. We would like to encourage you also to utilize the chat. So please talk to each other. We will try to talk as much as we can in the chat as well. But if you see that there's a question there that you feel that you have some insights on, please do share those as well. Really support each other in the chat, and we will try to get involved in this as much as possible. Okay. So we're going to then get started. I would like to welcome you all then to our next ISN live event, Standing Out Strategies to Secure Your First or Next International Teaching Role. So in today's competitive global education market, landing the right international school role takes more than just a strong CV. This practical CPD session is designed for teachers at any stage in their international journey, whether you're just exploring the idea or actively applying for those roles already. So led by our experienced school leaders, we have Simon Herbert, Addie Christian and Adam Dyson joining us today. They're going to demystify the recruitment process and really unpack what top schools are looking for to equip you then with the tools to present yourself confidently. So we're going to start by handing straight over to our keynote today to Adam Dyson. Adam has over 20 years of experience in education, including 11 in senior leadership. Currently, he is the primary head teacher at the British International School to Book and is currently completing a doctorate in education focused on conceptual learning, curriculum design and student agency. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to try and get straight onto this share. Okay, well, good morning. First and foremost, thank you for that intro. With the experience, hopefully I can capture some of the key parts to what will help a lot of you out there to apply for the international schools. And what I'm trying to do here in 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, Claire's given me, is capture some of the key parts to what we're looking for really during that interview process, how to put, your CV together. And if I repeat myself, it's really trying to keep within 10 minutes some of the key parts of what I think is important. I'm sure Simon and Addie will jump in as well at some point to add from their experience as well of what works for them. So to get started, I was thinking, what is key really when we talk and when we join teaching at the start? It comes with a passion. We can't get into teaching without some form of passion around how do we support children to progress, and then how do we capture that passion and make it purposeful? What is the intent and the why? Simon Sinek, the golden part of what we're doing, and making sure that you can put that in a CV and put that clearly across. It's not just about the passion at that point. It's about being purposeful and really looking into what is this, where are you applying? What is their culture, educational culture? And that can be very challenging because the international circuit, although we do end up crossing paths a lot in different events and so on and so forth, we're all very different. And obviously then you've got added parts to that depending on what part of the world you're in. So I've just put some prompts there, questions straight away. We know what motivates your teaching and why do you see our school as the next step in your journey? Well, how are you going to do that? Well, clearly by looking at some of the key parts of the media, the outputs they've used, the LinkedIn profiles, the website clearly, and then looking at that passion you have for teaching and trying to tailor that to the educational culture of that school. We filter through hundreds, if not thousands, of applications, and how do you then stand out in those thousands is making sure that you are showing some form of research put into that school you're applying. Believe it or not, there's numerous occasions where I can clearly see somebody hasn't before they even get to the written stage. When they get through to the interview, when you start to question around those areas and get an insight to what their passion is, but then, like I've said, how does it align? And Match with that, I thought when I consider, and I'm sure we sit here in this room now, I had to take a step and create the opportunity. And sometimes we can be lost in, and this is why I've used this Chris Grosser quote here: opportunities don't happen, you create them. I think the international circuit couldn't be more of a reflection of that. When you're moving, house, home, country, maybe your family as well within that, as I did, it's a huge step. And I think what you've got to be able to do is understand that that's an opportunity for you to take, and you create it. No one's going to come and get you and pull you across. You've got to look at those opportunities of what comes with that, and hopefully throughout this PowerPoint, as you're listening, you can see those opportunities that come with this application, this excitement, matched with the passion, obviously the drive that you want for the children. It's ensuring that you can see those opportunities you're creating for your own family and for the experience of your life you'll have when you join the international circuit, and you take that leap of faith, as it might be for some of you. Some of you might be just transitioning to different parts of the world, having worked in the international circuit. But again, we all recognise that it is a huge step, and one that, as when I had to make the decision with the family as well, obviously with my wife at the time, it was one that we had great conversations about. And obviously it's seeing that the benefits, not just what we're going to do with the house, how we're going to move, what about our son, daughter, so on and so forth, but more importantly, what comes with that greater part of the opportunity, the big steps. So I think, as always, with any interview, any application, there's always the anxiety that comes with that. That's natural. I'd be more concerned if I didn't see some form of nervous energy around an interview but again, being purposeful and being focused. It's about the balance. And I think a good way of kind of settling those nerves is understanding it's a two-way process, understanding that it's not just are you right for the school, but it's the school right for you. And the school in itself being in a different country, I think there's parts of that are huge parts of what you've got to consider when you're looking at these movements around the world, and how does that align for you? And a big part of that is your research done beforehand, but questions you can ask during the interview. Now, naturally, this is your opportunity within that interview to shine, to make sure that you're showing your narrative around teaching and how that aligns with the educational culture of perhaps that school you're applying for, your intent, the why. All those things are important, but you've also got to think about outside that school. And I've just put some prompts here, and I should have added at the beginning actually, to ensure that you can listen during this short kind of input, to make sure it's a lot of information to try and absorb in a short amount of time. I've created just a crib sheet at the end, so feel free to just sit back and obviously listen, and obviously type the questions that Claire said, but also know that I have captured the key takeaways from this, so you don't have to quickly jot things down. You've got that opportunity at the end. So let's get back to this. So personal fit and lifestyle. Naturally, you've got to consider that place you're moving. Does it align with who you are as a person? If you're looking for a busy city, then naturally, when I talk about British International School Riyadh, we have 7 campuses across Saudi Arabia, very different contexts. So my school, for instance, in the Tabuk region, we have unbelievable reef you can visit. We have a Lula, which is unbelievable, again, with the Mariah building, a mirrored building itself. So exploring the culture around the school is an opportunity. Whereas obviously when you go to in a city, Riyadh, for instance, it's a very different experience. So understanding exactly the location and how does that fit personally to you is key. Professional environment, the CPD opportunities, what are you doing already that maybe aligns with where they're looking at heading, but how do they support you in that kind of drive, your own educational journey that you're on? Just keep in mind that when you're applying, like we all do, we have our own desires, but naturally if we're putting out for a classroom teacher at that point, that you align to that classroom teacher. We want to know that you've got aspirations, but at that moment in time, it's a selling about how you align with that job location. So not being, we want aspiring leaders, but at the same time, we want somebody who can show how they're going to align with the application, the role that's put out. and perhaps added onto then the CPD opportunities of what you're reading, where you're heading in your own self as well. Cultural adaptations, being aware that naturally you're going to a different country, you're in a host country then, they have different ways of doing things. So understanding those cultural adaptations, how will you align? What research have you done into those areas? And bringing that up, or even asking those questions at the end of the interview, to an opportunity to, again, show that you've got that deeper understanding. It's not just about the school, it's about how you're going to fit. International circuit can be transient, is transient, but we're looking for, obviously, people who have made a commitment at that point to a contract. And that, again, is a great way to reassure the person you're speaking to that you have thought about how you're going to settle in, and those moments of your personal life match with your work-life balance. Your family independent, and how are they going to settle in? What their opportunities have they got? It's surprising, the question that I ask sometimes, what's your husband or wife going to do? And occasionally it catches them off guard. And, this, to not be thinking about moving at that point to a different country and then not considering what their wife or husband's going to do, or whatever scenario you're in, it is a bit of a shock at that point. That could be a big factor of why maybe someone doesn't settle and moves on. So considering, how is the family settling into this new environment and the working life, and your due diligence as well around the school itself. There's reports to read, the school index you can go on. We've talked about the marketing elements of what the school will be putting out on social media. You'll soon get a feel of the culture they have. And when I talk about red flags, as in, what is their recent report? What are you looking for within that school, and how does that align with you? So, how do you stand out then? How do you ensure that when we're going through these applications, that your CV is the one that I stop and read? And a big part I always look for is the narrative. I've talked about the passion at the beginning. I think having a narrative and showing impact, talking about your experience, but tell me about the impact it's had on the children. And so the standout and the personal statement, yes, we'll have a question about AI and the use of AI in applications. And it's the human part to what I'm looking for now. There's clear tells on when somebody's just typed through. Some very obvious ones with school mottos, perhaps not quite aligning with the real school motto, when they quickly run it through an AI tool, or hyphenated sentences, full out through, power of three. There's all these kind of tells. But what I can clearly see is when someone's put their own narrative, their story, their understanding of what their impact had in class, what's the outcome of that impact? That you can't run through with ChatGPT. Yeah, grammatically, okay, it's important that we're looking for grammatical, sentences that clearly show an understanding of what we're looking for within an application. But when you apply, when I read your CV, your application, tell me about the story you've had already. Tell me about that impact and how you've changed the school process, or how you've shown a child move through this learning journey into this happy, educated child that's full of passion for learning. How did you take some form of autonomy on the planning, and how did that change the narrative, the output of the classroom, and all those exciting parts? That's part of what you can't just run through AI, and it's clear when I read that top line in an application. And like I said, when you read through hundreds, it soon is clear who has and who hasn't. Change management. Think about that, because international schools, very, very adaptable, quick to the change as well, and ensuring that we are aware of that change happens in every school, clearly. But the international circuit, especially, showing that you're aware of how you've managed change in your current school would align great. Anticipate the questions, a key, and I would have thought a lot of you would have thought about this. Expect a safeguarding question, clearly. You're going to know your processes around education in those. But anticipate the other part of, or when you've applied, when you've wrote your personal statement, what's in there for some of these ones, like gaps in employment, your CPD. What have you done recently that has made an impact in class? What books are you reading? Those types of things. Have them ready, practice them, understand them. And again, if they can align from what information you can pull from the website, of the school's website, if they can align on those, then again, that's going to make you definitely stand out. And I've put there, don't be afraid to shine at the top, ensuring that you understand it is your moment to shine. And how do you shine? By doing exactly this, by talking about the impact. I'm going to keep saying that word, talking about the narrative of your teaching and coming away from the kind of standard elements of what is generally on a CV, always been run through AI. Now more of the story of your journey of education and how that can align with the school's educational culture or their school's vision and mission. I've put on there. And curriculum knowledge, autonomy, creativity, I've mentioned about that being more about the narrative, the impact, and how you align curriculum. But I've said I'm currently doing my own studies and changes of curriculum, and again, showing that you have some autonomy, shown autonomy over not just grabbing a scheme of work and running with a scheme of work, but what have you done to adapt to the children's needs? What have you done to show that the children at the forefront of your planning, your curriculum understanding? Yes, you might know the English national curriculum. How is that now going to support you for the IB maybe you're moving into? And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. So key takeaways. How do you capture all that? I said there's a crib sheet. I'm sure Claire will happy to share that at the end. But make sure you talk about the why, the purpose, the intent, okay, that you have. How does that align with the school you're applying for? Okay. And then important, I've said this a lot, the impact you've had. Make sure you make it clear the impact you've had on the children, because that's why we exist. We're schools. We're here for the children. So how have you made an impact on a child's life? How have you made them passionate about education? How have you driven that across the school, perhaps in some cases? And hopefully that and those three areas, if you can consider how those will align in your CV, but also when you're answering through the questions, you've given the why, you've aligned with the school, and you've evidenced the impact. That should definitely be showing some form of standout. I know I would be impressed if you did that. And the ones that generally get through interview and get the contract offer are the ones that have shown those three. And I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Adam, for sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some fantastic insights in there. And we will share then that crib sheet with everybody afterwards, so that, as Adam mentioned, you didn't need to kind of scribble down any notes.
Yeah.
But it was great to hear those reflections. And I really enjoyed then the idea of kind of making those direct correlations then between what the school mission statement is and what you're actually looking for, and you kind of applying your experience and your knowledge and your expertise directly to that and seeing, does this fit for me? And if it does, then this is how I can fit into your school, and making that really crystal clear. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so we're moving on now. I'm going to introduce now our next two speakers who will be joining us for our panel discussion. I was hoping that they can also do a brief introduction themselves, because we've got the brilliant Simon Herbert joining us here, then from GEMS, and we also have Addie Christian joining us also from SIAS International School. So can I ask you both for a very quick kind of introduction, and then we're going to kickstart our panel discussion.
Shall I kick off, Addie?
Go ahead, Simon.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Claire, for inviting me and us. It's a real pleasure, a real privilege, and if we can give any insights to the incoming teachers, then fantastic. And Adam's covered everything. We can all go home now. So Adam, whistle stop. But obviously during this, we'll probably reiterate some of those points. So I hope you don't mind. So for myself, I'm CEO principal of a 4-program IB school in the UAE, which has been an interesting challenge for me, taking all through IB. Previously, I've been a principal of a British then IB at the top. That was in China for 8 years in Beijing. So I've been here 5 years in Dubai. Just got back from my holiday in Scotland, so it's a slight temperature difference right now. And before that, before China, I was in Edinburgh for 11 years, and before that London, and so I'm delighted to be able to help through my recruitment. Obviously, I recruit a lot of people we've got 400 staff here, so I'm recruiting admin as well. So if there's admin folk on this call, slightly different angles, but I'm really happy to help afterwards with admin interviews as well, and if people have specific questions. But thank you very much, Claire, for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Simon and Addie.
Hi. So it's easy when I come in and say ditto to all that they said. Definitely for all those things. Much appreciation. I'm in Zhengzhou, China, which is about 2 hours north or so let's say southwest of Beijing. We're at a new school, so it's a new experience of trying to bring in people. We're the only international school in this province, so we have the job of teaching everyone how to recruit people and the importance of that, of bringing in different internationalities. So we have people from 30 different countries that come into us in here because we want to have that IB experience. So we too are an IB school all the way through for those things, and lots of recruitment going on as well. We don't have as many as Simon on those parts, but we just ran our first admin. We have a primary and secondary principal joining. I'm the current principal now. We'll move to deputy head next year, and that was quite an experience. We had about 60 people apply for each one, and so very successful for that part, and have lots of fun with recruitment. So it's a thing that I really want to chat about and let people know. Don't be scared. Do take that risk. Because Adam said, you have to be that person that puts the opportunity in there and make it happen. So I'm very excited to be part of this, to help someone join this journey, because it's lots of fun.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to start our panel discussion today with a quick poll, because we'd love to learn a little bit more about people's experiences here as well. So I'm just going to pull this up. Let's go back here. And we would like to now ask you, here we go. What are the biggest challenges of gaining an international teaching position from your experience? So you can select multiple options here. So there's lots here that you can kind of filter through and potentially select from this. So if you want to just add your thoughts here, and then we'll share these results afterwards. I'm going to leave them up. I'll leave this up for another 1 minute. Okay, right. I'm going to end this poll here, and I can publish these results. Thank you for everybody who's filled this in for us. Okay, so we've got quite a few people saying lack of international teaching experience is the thing that's kind of holding them back at the moment. Difficulty finding reliable job postings and the competitive application process. I think Adam was, well, everybody here has mentioned actually how popular some of these teaching positions are. Unfamiliar hiring practices, the cost of moving, credentials and actually those being recognised in different settings, language or cultural barriers, uncertainty about the salary or benefits, concerns about the stability of moving abroad, limited support from recruitment agencies, difficulty in obtaining past references. Yeah, and Adam also was talking about these family commitments is a massive part of that international recruitment. Lack of clear information about the school reputation. So yeah, making sure that you really do need to do that due diligence and that research into that school, adjusting to different curricula, whether you're moving from British to IB or from American to IB, really understanding that curriculum and those expectations, and late job postings. Okay, thank you so much for sharing some of those thoughts. If there are more in there that weren't in those kind of poll options, please do drop them in the chat as well. And I know we've got a couple of questions here in the chat. If we can get to these, we will absolutely try to, if not directly in this session right now, then afterwards. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into our panel discussion, and hopefully we're going to kind of answer any of those questions that might be coming up for you as well. And we have the opportunity to get everybody's insights on these. So our first question we'd like to ask, this is for Simon. And Simon, we wanted to ask you then, what are the biggest changes you've seen in international school recruitment over the past few years?
Yes, so I guess in some ways I'm being asked to start on a kind of negative-ish question, which it is true that for us, okay, so talking as a recruiter, changes and challenges, what are they? It did used to be a bit easier, actually, because there weren't so many international schools. There weren't so many people looking to move internationally. When I moved internationally, it was quite unusual I was seen as, a bit freakish. What on earth are you doing? Why would you leave Edinburgh to go off to Beijing, back in the day? But now, after a couple of years teaching, many people are thinking of going international, right? Now, if you look at what's happening in the UK, I can understand some of the reasons why as well, and we can benefit from that. But it does make it quite tricky for recruiters because we now have, my first point is sheer numbers. As Adam said, sifting through, that makes the recruiter's job a lot harder. And it actually means we've got to put more people on it. We've got to train more people up in our schools before it even reaches me. I don't want to be seeing 1,000 and saying, well, this person has never, etc., doesn't have a qualification or whatever. I don't want to be looking at those. So you've got other people have to filter first of all. So it's sheer numbers. I think that's been a change. Which is it's good in many ways. People are looking at coming international, but I would say don't jump ship too quickly. International recruiters are also looking at solid. If you said to me, what is my ideal candidate? It might be different for Addie and Adam, or it might overlap. Would be somebody who's had some solid school experience in their own country. Why would you leave so quickly? Actually, get a bit of solid experience in selective, non-selective, maybe a range of schools. My ideal is actually national and then one international school and then come to me. That's sort of perfect. But so that's been a big change. I've also come across, sort of linked to that lack of experience, many candidates who sort of just don't really have a clue, which is why this webinar is so important. They're not sure what to say, what to have on their CV, how to adapt their CV, as Adam said. Platforms, be careful of platforms, because of these, and Claire mentioned it, different agencies. Take advice from people like Claire and others, because there are some real cowboy outfits out there. Obviously, I'm not going to mention any of them, but we all know as recruiters, Addie and Adam, myself, sitting there, we see the emails come through, and it is sometimes an absolute scattergun. And they are sending, people who have absolutely no relevance to your school, who probably haven't applied to you. They just put their name on this. You're probably paying for that privilege as well. And they're not serving you well. So be careful who you go with. I would say, and I don't mean this critically, and that's why this webinar is so important, poorly prepared candidates. It's actually quite a surprise to me. I've, just being prepared. And on that note, can I do a quick tangent, Claire? Really, really, really quick tangent. I asked to try and help you. I thought I'll ask my new candidates, the ones who are the best that I've had last year. Before this, I thought, well, I'll ask them. I'm not the guru of all knowledge. I thought I'll ask them and their advice. So these are new teachers who did make it, who got through. They said, in your current job where you are now, do more than you have to, right? Do more to put on your CV, just to have many, many things to talk about. Exam marking, maybe a range of relevant PD, visits to other schools, extracurricular coaching. If you've done boarding experience and you're going to a boarding school, make sure you note it down, go above and beyond. They said, look up who is going to interview you. And on that point, by the way, we're talking about interviews, but you might have 2 rounds of interviews. Mm. Now, the first round might be for my school, wouldn't be with me, it would be with the head of department. It's going to ask more specific departmental and pedagogy questions maybe, but know who's going to interview you. We have people who turn up and don't even know, they don't know me, don't know the school. So know that, present yourself well. That's one, we could go into that one. Adapt your CV. Adam said that already. Watch out for your social media. Okay, I know we tell students that, but we have to know that as well as staff. Know about the school. Adam said that. Your pedagogy, maybe have a couple of ideas on educational theory that you might get asked that, and questions in mind. So anyway, that's what they said to me. So I thought I would share that. Other changes, I would say that from the school angle, I'll be brief. From the school angle, the package that we are offering, because there's so much competition in the market, it could be that you're sitting in an area where, for example, UAE, house prices have gone up hugely. Does the school that you're looking to come to, does it offer housing as it used to? Does it give the same housing allowance? Those sort of changes, that's a challenge for us. Some schools, even within my school group, some schools can offer 2 child places, some schools can offer 1. So there are challenges when we're coming up against other groups of schools. That's a challenge. The location is something that can be challenging. I was in Beijing before, and actually, you know, it's a challenge to a recruiter to make sure you put across the value and the wonder of Beijing and the, you know, amazing things you can do. Adam already did that. You heard Adam talking about, you know, with really great enthusiasm. But when we're sifting through candidates, I mean, it's great. I said at the beginning, the thousands, but once we get to the really good ones, that's tight competition, you know, for the recruiter. When we go to search fairs, we're battling against other schools, and, you know, so that's quite an interesting one. I think that's the whistle stop on that so far.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I think that was really a good point to make at the end there, because I know you start with that idea of sheer numbers, and I think it can be very overwhelming thinking I'm going to be one applicant in potentially 1,000. But if you really are investing, as Simon said, in some of those insights that those educators have given, you know, making sure that you're going that extra mile, doing that PD, researching the school, who the interviewer is, going above and beyond, really making sure that you're taking that time to gain that experience, and so that when you come to actually submit some of those applications, that you're giving yourself the best chance and putting that best foot forwards, and then you will be in that selection at the end. So there are lots of numbers, but if you're doing the work, you know, they are looking for candidates just like you. So thank you so much for sharing. Addie, our next question then is for you, and I know we've got some questions coming up in the chat as well. We will get onto these also. So the question that we have for you is starting again from quite a practical note. So we mentioned about kind of recruitment and where to go and where people should look. Where should teachers then look for jobs, and where should they submit those applications?
So when I think of that, I think of two things. There are some reputable recruitment companies, so those platforms, and then there's also the internet itself. So if you know that there's a country or an area you're interested in, you can research on there and find the schools yourself and apply, because all of us put them on our websites as well as other places. But when you're looking for those online platform recruitment places, you want to do your homework, right? You do want to make sure that that they are reputable, because we do have a lot that we get a lot of junk on times, honestly, for some of them. So you want to do that. And then also some of them kind of hone in on special areas. So when I started working abroad in Abu Dhabi, the platform I went through, it was actually geared mostly towards the Middle East. So you also have to look at those avenues. But the platforms to me is a place that I, as a recruiter, I really like. And each of them give us different things. I like the ones that tells me, have they stayed at a job? What are their ratings? What are their strengths? What are their growth areas? And it gives us snapshots. So for me, the online platforms are some of the easiest ones to find good quality candidates. And as Simon was mentioned, there's job fairs that are available through those. And that's the best, because when you have that one-to-one face, it helps, because we get to know the teachers, but then they get to know us too, because it's so important that it's a good fit both ways. It's a big thing to move overseas, and you want to make sure you have that good fit for those things. So for me, to go back for it, it's teaching platforms, the recruitment's online, and then also take the dive and do a little bit of work and find the schools that you like, because we do post all of those on the websites as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think that what a great tip at the end there. So if there's a school that you're really interested in, or there are schools that you're really interested in, look at those schools directly, look on their job listings on their websites. Don't just rely on those recruiters as well. I think, yeah, excellent advice. Thank you for sharing. Adam, our next question then is for you. So what makes a teaching CV and cover letter stand out in a competitive international pool? And with the increase in AI tools to assist in the development of these, how do you spot those tells? You know, what's the best way that people can put that first words?
Thanks, Scott. I know we're going to be quite repetitive here, because, you know, Simon's mentioned about some of the things about preparation, you know, making sure you've done it. So many times it is, and perhaps a lot of it is, like Simon said, with the recruiter. If you end up handing over your CV to somebody, they are sometimes pushed multiple times, and as Simon said, you know, we get emails left, right, and center that have no context to the application. So just be aware of that. Don't hand out your CV freely. You know, it's the wrong message. Okay, because naturally we're all, as we can see, Addie, Simon, we're all in different parts of the world, have completely different contexts. Show me that you've read who I am. Okay, not personally Adam Dyson, but BISR as a whole. You know, and understand that we have 7 campuses, and that fact, you know, you're applying for Tabuk, which is about 2,000 kilometers from the Riyadh school. Yeah, there's quite a big difference in that, and just being very clear, that is quite an easy find. You know, that isn't hard to find, and I think those are quick, easy wins. Do your research personally. Understand then, as Simon says, as you're getting through these rounds, that you're understanding who your interviewer is. I think that's a fantastic idea. I've seen it, and it instantly, naturally, we are human. So when somebody says, "Oh, you know, Adam, I've noticed you've done X," it does make you understand that there's somebody who's put, you know, passion, purposeful passion into the application. AI wise, I mentioned a few hyphenated sentences, you know, grammatical applications now. Might have been errors in grammar, might have been a bit of a warning sign. Rarely coming through now. The opposite quite is now the motto. Again, BISR, I'm going to talk about BISR Reach. We have the R. It is respect. So many times it comes through in the CV and it's not the reference in the school motto, and it's not the actual motto because they've just run it through AI and not even read. And again, you could imagine that's going straight to the bottom line. That's not getting through. So reading, taking the time, cross-referencing, checking for over hyphenated sentences, opening a sentence past the formality. And I keep talking about narrative of teaching. Tell me who you are in that opening sentence, because like we've said, these are 1,000 applicants. That opening sentence is key, and making sure it links to some form of purposeful passion. And when I talk about the narrative, talk about an impact, talk about what you've done. You know, Simon again explained about how taking up opportunities in these schools. Talk about that. You know, this is your moment. This is your moment to stand out above and beyond everyone else. And if, let's talk percentages, if 60% have put it through AI, they've gone. Now you're in a 40%. So don't think about, although we're saying there's 1,000 applicants, in some cases there's not. And I don't want to put people off. We want people to apply. We want there to be thousands applying. And so in that 1,000, do your percentage, start to think about how do you get in that top 10% right at the beginning, because then naturally there's a good chance you're going to get through to the final stages of the rounds. And yeah, I've put here in my notes, just being human, the human touch. And I think the only part of human touch now really we can see that will outwit AI in some ways is the experience. Talk about your experience. The AI tool cannot tell me what you've done in class about that history topic you taught and the impact it had on those children. That AI can't do that. It's only you that can do that. And so give me those examples, because those instantly are going to the top of my list, because I know it's not just been put through AI and you've copied and pasted off our website and ran it through. So I think that they're the key parts that can't be produced on AI.
Yeah, excellent advice. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that there were some really good points there made, and yeah, that real kind of human approach to this. Better to have a spelling mistake than have something that's been chucked through AI that actually makes no sense. There's just, you know, it's a completely flowery language that actually isn't really getting to the point. You know, much better to just write exactly who you are and what you've done and really engage that impact. Thank you. So our next question, I think this is one that that lots of people want to know. So Simon, this one is for you. What are the most common interview questions international schools ask, and how can candidates prepare?
Yeah, hi again. Well, obviously this is a sort of personal answer and it will differ a little bit school to school, but I'm sure there'll be some overlap. I am giving what I've asked and what my colleagues have asked, and I've drawn on what I thought is best practice over the years. Before I get to that, because this is a big one, right? You know, what we might ask in an interview, just jumping on what Adam said again, just well done. If you've got this far, then you've listened to all that sort of advice from Adam, you're really on it. And so you've got to the interview stage. What I would say is, even before I said what I asked, beware, and Adam hinted at this as well, actually, through AI, beware also educational speak, right? Edu speak. We get so many candidates. We know you've done a PGCE. We know that you can talk about, you can give educational buzzwords, but it's not going to get you far, because you really want to dig into. So, you know, instead of, and I actually wrote this down, instead of saying, I believe that data analysis and personalized learning is important and differentiation allows students to thrive. Right. I've just given you 3 educational words and I've said nothing really. I could have got that from a manual. I could have, just come up with that from AI, as Adam said. Instead of that, you could say, well, I make sure I know all the students from their interests, why and how they struggle in maths, and I'll tell you how I turned it round for them. That time, suddenly I'm interested, right? You're making puzzles. I was just jumping on Adam's. Okay, so over to the actual questions. And I say they may differ school to school a little bit. Initially, I would always ask for a little bit of background. Yes, I've got your CV. Yes, I've got your letter. Are you able to synthesize very, very quickly? I might say, just remind us how you've got to this stage, why this job, and why now. But at that point, I'm looking for you to be pretty brief. And I'll say, very briefly, Claire did that at the beginning of this call, right? And all of us gave a kind of very brief outline. That's what we're looking at the very beginning of the interview. And I did say earlier on, remember, you may have had one interview already. So that I'm talking a bit generally here. I'm talking about the interviews that I give as a head of school. The first round might be a bit more in-depth on your subject knowledge and things like that. I would say things like, how would a colleague describe you? 3 strengths and 1 area to develop. I never say 1 weakness, you notice that, 1 area to develop. But I don't let them do that. I say, how would a colleague do that? So think about that. Think about your colleagues. And then I might say, students, how would they describe, what would, and maybe an area to develop. And that's really interesting because people struggle with that area to develop as well, because they're not sure what to say in an interview. Don't, and I would say, don't say the usual, well, I work so hard, I barely have time to, with my family. That's a kind of an old one. Just think of something. We won't mind if you say, well, I don't know much about the IB, actually, really. I've never taught it. I've read up on it. I think I have the right philosophy for it. That's good. That's kind of admitting, not failure, that's admitting that you're still learning. So Addie, Adam, and myself, we want people that are learners for life, not people who think they know it all, and the experts at the front of the class who knows all the content. That's one thing. We want people who are going to arrive to our school and our students as well. Other questions I might ask would be, how do you use data to inform your planning? What does high quality teaching and learning look like? Because I'm trying to get at you. I'm trying to sort of find out more about you. You give, and as Adam said, give specific experiential examples from that, from your own life. Cultural, I might lob in a question somehow about the cultural, if you're going to China or you're coming to the UAE, culture and understanding. I'll try and draw that out of you. Doesn't matter if you don't have a foreign language, that's okay, so long as you have the right attitude to other nationalities, other cultures, and you're willing to learn again. And then I might specifically go on to classroom stuff. I might say, how do you reward good behavior? How do you deal with bullying situation in your classroom? I think many recruiters would ask, how do you deal with something that went wrong? How do you overcame this difficulty? Now, that could be departmental. It could be in your teaching life. It could be when you disagreed with someone. That's okay, but we want to know how you handled it and how you came out the other side, and maybe what you've learned from it. Now, this is a bit idiosyncratic, but I do tend to ask people, I sometimes do ask people what they're currently reading, because they talk about, their life, and I like people to read more broadly. Now, if they come up with, I've just read this educational piece, then that's fine. And I know they're trying to impress, but, any reading really, what do you enjoy reading? And beware here, have something in mind, because I've even asked English teaching candidates. I was thinking about this before. So I remember asking some English teachers, potential candidates, what are you reading at the moment then? They talked about how they love reading, and they went blank. And actually, they answered me with what they're already teaching on the curriculum. Oh, my favorite book ever is Of Mice and Men. Come on, give us some breadth and some interest. Be interesting. What's influenced your educational philosophy from what you've read? I think it's important, by the way, that's what the new teachers said to me. They said, always have something that has influenced you educationally. It could be a role model or something you've read. I think that's quite important. What are you most proud of? And then we pass on to maybe stuff outside of, what do you enjoy outside of your job? What do you do to relax? These types of things, and I don't want to say beware, because I want you to enjoy the interview. It is our job to make you feel relaxed in an interview situation as well. okay? You're deciding on us as well at the same time. So if your interviewers are just harsh, stringent, rigorous, quite dull, then maybe it's not the right school for you either, because we know you're judging us as well. So I'm trying to get you to relax a little bit. And it's funny, it's actually the questions, it's reading in between the lines that can be the win or lose in an interview situation. It could be when you say about your home life or your journey, personal journey. It's not all about the classroom. And what would you offer as an ECA? That's extracurricular activity. Schools have different terminology for that. Would you offer, you're interested in offering anything? And then I would be looking at specific to our curriculum, because we're a 4-program IB school. So then I would say things like, how would you deal with the challenge of moving to a new location, new curriculum? How would you deal with that workload? Can you think of any challenges you might have teaching the IB? How do you currently use any IB sort of style of teaching? How do you support learners who are struggling to meet the demands of the IB? So that you can hear those are kind of very curriculum specific. I might say something about the learner profile in the IB. How do you use that? And then, so that covers quite a range. And then I would say, as Adam mentioned, there's always going to be a safeguarding question. Okay, now you're talking to you've got 3 recruiters on here with a lot of recruiting practice, but you will meet people who just ask you a pretty dull safeguarding question. Like, what do you know about well-being of children? What can you tell me about safeguarding? If you get one like that, still be specific, give them some examples, okay? Because it's tempting to just say, oh yes, I know that safeguarding is, neglect or physical, etc., going through almost a rote repetition of what it is, but actually give some examples. To help you with that, I've got a few questions that we might ask with safeguarding. Would be, you see a student who needs help, walk us through how you would handle this, especially if they ask you to be confidential. What would you do? Another one is, tell us about a recent work situation you've experienced which involved a child at risk. Or tell me about a time you volunteered your help to a child in need. You have to talk us through that situation. When was the last safeguarding child protection training that you did? What did you learn from it? How do you keep yourself safe in a school setting? Do you have up-to-date and clear DBS, so criminal record checks, from the country that you're coming from? Tell us about a time you took action to help protect a child. How do you define appropriate staff-pupil relationship? How do you define that yourself? What do you think makes a school safe and supportive? And by the way, on the penultimate one there, that one about how do you define appropriate staff-pupil relationship? I would say just be careful, be yourself. But I have in the past been quite put off candidates who seem to me to want to be the student's friend, to want to be Mr. or Mrs. Popular. And that can come across through an interview, even if you're not like that. So don't feel you have to answer that one as I'm really, I'm such a superb rapport, then, sort of it verges into friendship. You're a professional, you're their teacher, you're distanced, but you're of course you still want a good rapport with them. Okay.
Thank you so much. There was some brilliant questions in there, and we might go through and grab that list from you as well at the end, Simon, so that we can share that with everybody. That would be fantastic. Yeah, and I really enjoyed that when you were saying that, think about, it might not even be just who you read recently or what you kind of has inspired your practice, but who's mentored you, who inspired you recently, which teachers are you working with that have really kind of inspired your practice? I thought that's a really great insight. Thank you. So our next question then, so over now to Addie. We have, I think, a couple of early career teachers on this call, and I think this would be a great question now for them. So how can early career teachers or those without previous international experience build a competitive edge?
So when we're looking at resumes, the one thing I look at is the time spent. So Simon had mentioned this, that don't jump from job to job. Even if you are at your local, stay there, show that you have some stability, because that's the number one thing that we really want. We want that stability. If you know that you're going to start looking for an abroad job, then take that adventure in the summertime. One of our current teachers we just hired, he did an internship in China during the summer, fell in love with it, went back home for a couple of years and decided to come back. So you can do it that way. Also vacationing, those type of things. Get out there and explore, because the key thing, and I'm going to build on what Adam said, it's about those authentic experiences. what have you done to be able to show that you're adaptable in any environment? Because honestly, I know my school, we could pick up my school and put it in America and it would fit in just about anywhere because kids are kids, students are, adults are adults for those things. So as long as you have those experiences that you can share and being able to say, because Adam's right, it's not what's on AI. It's what you're able to actually be able to share about your experiences. That's where your passion shines through. It's about having the confidence, even on the resume when you're writing it. There are things that you can put on there that shows your experiences, that you know how to manage a classroom, that you know how to cultivate those relationships with the students. Those are the things that I know I'm looking for, and I'm sure they are as well, because those relationships matter. So it's okay if you don't have any of the experience, but do your homework. Know the school you're going to, be able to show the recruiters that you have taken that initiative because you may not have as much, but that you are motivated to make a difference and to be a part of something. So start off with the confidence for things. Make sure that you have connections in some way to be able to show. Most classrooms have some type of culture, multicultural in them. So just give those experiences. So just make those connections and let them know that even though I don't have that experience, I have done X, Y, Z, and it is very similar to what I'm sure would be there. So just being authentic and being confident in what you're saying and doing.
Thank you for that, Addie. I think we had a couple of questions in there about what can I do if I don't have that, that experience, and some really good thoughts there as well. Yeah, getting yourself out there and taking on those opportunities where they present themselves. So our next question then is for Adam. I know that we are running short on time here, so we're going to see how much we can get through. Adam, I'm going to ask you this one, and we may be able to get through just one more question, and we might need to cut this short, but if people want to stay for longer, then they can. So Adam, I wanted to ask you, is international experience necessary, or do international schools typically provide support and mentorship to teach a new curriculum model such as the IB?
Yeah, and straight away, I mean, this links directly to Addie and Simon's kind of answer, adaptability. Straight away, you've got bonus, not a barrier. At what I wrote down, I suppose it's a bonus, not a barrier. It's not something that we're looking at and going, right, there's no experience here, they're not coming. It's more about, right, what can we see in this experience that aligns already with the school? That would be the question I'm really looking at when I'm reading through a CV or a personal statement. I know, obviously, the culture of my school. So when I'm reading these, I'm looking at these examples. I'm looking at how this person's adaptable, as Addie said. How are they curious? What we've said about their background and what they're reading, their exploration of curricula, the research they're doing personally. Those are types of questions we can ask and find, and in an interview can actually grapple with and delve into a bit more deeper. But on your CV, be aware of being, this is a big step, and so think about those life skills outside of your curricular, outside of what we know within education, but just as a human, what clearly you're going to have to be able to be good at to be able to adapt, to be able to move, which is adaptability. You're going to have to deal with changing in culture, changing educational setting, changing in some ways. If you're coming from an English curriculum, you're going to have to learn how to be adaptable to an IB system. There's emotional intelligence. Look at that as well. Another human trait of how do you deal with stress? How do you work with colleagues in tough moments? Teaching is a hard job. We all know that. From nativity, I can use setting up a nativity, which we know can be very stressful. As a primary head, I've seen it multiple times, through to changes to the curriculum in a deeper level where you've done your own research, you've got to learn new things. So we need to understand that when I'm reading, I need to see those examples around those kind of key life skills. Do we support? Of course we do. When they move across, for instance, at the school I'm working at, and again, Addie and Sam will be exactly the same. We have our approaches to the curriculum, so it's not a drop in the ocean, off you go. It is CPD, it's support, it's levels of staff training. We have a professional learning hour every week. as well as a staff meeting. We have mentorships. I've got aspiring leaders, which we have, supporting in multiple areas, where in fact I've looked at opportunities for them joining on some interview processes again, and for them to see the other side. So it's like anything within education. We have a lot of abbreviations, we have a lot of processes, we have a lot of things going on at a rapid pace. With that comes a lot of support. And again, if we're talking about is the school right for you, you should. I love the fact we've said it's a two-way thing. We're all saying that it is an opportunity for you to see if that school's right for you from the person you're meeting on the other side of the interview. And that I will make that clear. It's a big piece. I see it as I'm marketing BISR in my scenario as well as Adam Dyson. It's not Adam Dyson, it's British National School Riyadh. So I've got to be aware that the people who perhaps aren't successful are the ones walking away with a narrative from who I am and who my school is. And so that's what I'm saying is a two-way thing. So be relaxed, understand that you're there to see if this school's right for you as much as we're checking if you're right for us. And hopefully that will bring back to what Simon says, get the real you. We get to see who you are. We get to see the experience on paper, but then ask you in more detail about how is that going to impact my school, and more importantly, the children, and get the best out of you.
Thank you. Okay. Then we have run out of time. There was so much to fit in here. We do have a couple more questions that I'm going to put to Simon, Addie, and Adam after this session, and I can feed back these answers to you because I don't want to overrun. I know that people are very busy and we've got places to be. So I'm just going to drop our link then for our event survey in here, so you can fill this in then to receive your certificate for this event today. But finally, just before we leave, I would just love to ask each of you, if somebody was to attend an interview, get to that stage, what questions should they prepare to ask you at the end when you say, do you have any questions for me? Do you have something that you would say, oh, ask me this?
Shall I
go jump in if you've got something?
Yeah. Well, if you've got that far, then Adam was talking about do your reading about the school, your reports, you read the handbook, the website. So surely, I think most of us, if we're really interested in a job, it's going to come through because you would have done your reading, and then you'll have a specific question, right? You will have something. So that's my advice on that. And also, I've written down here, it's kind of what not to ask as well. So you be careful, candidates. Don't say, you've had a lovely interview. Have you got any question? You kind of go a bit blank and say, yeah, when are the holidays? Or how much do I have off? Or what time does the school day finish? Because be careful. Even if in your mind you're thinking, oh, it's just a question about timetable. But the way it can come across, it's just you want to get out, pens down, and go. Ask about vision, mission, facilities, ECAs, ethos of the school. Adam said a really interesting thing about don't just think you're going to a British international school or a French international school, an IB school. They're all different, aren't they? They all have their own culture. So you could, let's say you know a bit about IB, you could say something quite specific about that. You could say, how do your teachers outline concepts? How's that happen? How many hours of phonics do you do in grade 1? It could be a very specific, and we'd be quite impressed by that. You've done your reading and you're asking about us as a school.
Thank you. Any others? I think that was some great advice.
I think, just to pick up on Simon said, with reports, with inspections, you'll have, in every inspection, you'll have like a focus. So again, maybe it is, looking at how do your skills, and what questions could you ask around that area of focus that they've got as a school, or where they're heading. I suppose that links with the culture and the vision and mission. But key not to just, I think not asking the wrong question is, it does happen a lot. PPA, if I get asked about PPA, how much PPA time do we get? Surprisingly, people ask it. And they're not the things you need to be worrying about at that point. And that's how it comes across to me. I'm thinking, well, you're moving country. PPA surely is at the bottom of that list. So yeah, okay, that'd be mine.
Yeah. I had a really good one real quick from a candidate. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought. They wanted to know how I would view that they were successful in their job, right? And what in our eyes were we not just expecting, but that they would do a really good job, because then they want to make sure that we met their expectations and our expectations. So it was really kind of cool that they thought about that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. How do you see that I would be successful in this job? How would that look? Yeah, wonderful. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. There were a couple of questions that we didn't get to. Like I said, I'm going to put these to our speakers and I'll feed back to everybody. And there were a couple of questions in the chat as well. I'm also going to put to each of our speakers just to get their thoughts on these, and we'll try to feed back on each of these. So thank you, everybody who was able to attend live today. I know that we're going to have a good number of people watching this back, because there were some excellent insights in here, and we had a huge amount of people who registered. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time. And please reach out to each of our speakers on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. Yeah, thank you, everyone.